Hello, my name is Shari and I'm a guide here at Hearst Castle. Imagine, if you will, that you were a guest of Mr. Hearst and you got to come up here to the hilltop. Now, you may have traveled extensively and had the richness of the experience of culture and art and architecture from Europe perhaps, or you may not have traveled at all. But Mr. Hearst wanted to create a Spanish Mediterranean village here on the hilltop. So as a guest, no matter what your experience, you would come up here and experience what it would be like to be on a hilltop community in Italy or Spain perhaps. And if you're lucky enough, you might be able to stay in the Doge Suite. Now, your first word that you could utter might just be, wow. You are surrounded by the rich architecture and art from all over the world. And here in the Doge Suite, you would have approximately 1,300 square feet because there are 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a sitting room. Now that's bigger than the average apartment in the United States. And there's not even a kitchen here. Now, as a guest, you probably would have taken a private train car that would have taken you to San Luis Obispo or Paso Robles. It might have been a sleeping car, and it might have been at night, and they would pull it off and let you sleep the rest of the evening, and a private taxi would pick you up in the 30s, possibly a Cadillac or a Packard, driven you up that coastline that was dirt at the time, and then when you reached the bottom of the hill, it was a dirt road coming up here as well because Mr. Hearst did not want to pave it. He thought it would be bad for the animals. Now, you might be pretty tired by the time the staff met you and escorted you up here to the Doge Suite. Well, you could actually take a nap, close the door, and the staff could continue to unpack for you because the closets are located outside the door. Now, we have a few items that you might have wanted to bring as a guest coming up here to the hilltop. There's a lot of activities, but if you forgot to bring something, Mr. Hearst would provide it for you. But I knew ahead of time, so I was thinking about possibly playing tennis. Now, once in a while, we'd have famous tennis pros that would come up here, like Bill Tilton, who was the first American to win Wimbledon, and then Alice Marble, who won Wimbledon, the US Open, several times. She had 18 Grand Slams in a 4-year period. Now, I might want to go horseback riding, brought my boots and my pants. Mr. Hearst would like to take people out on horseback riding episodes, possibly overnight trips with camping involved. Now, about 100 yards away from us is the indoor Roman pool. So, of course, I brought my bathing suit. That would be an important thing for you to bring because also there's the outdoor Neptune pool. Now, during the day, maybe a day dress to go to the zoo. Mr. Hearst had the largest private zoo in America at one point. And then also an evening dress because around 7 o'clock, Mr. Hearst wanted you there for cocktail hour, dinner, and a movie. Now, you would be surrounded by some very interesting guests because he would bring up people from Hollywood because he did own a movie company at one point. So say Hollywood guests will, of course, would include his girlfriend, actress Mary Davies, who starred in silent films as well as talking films. And then somebody like Colleen Moore. Colleen Moore also did silent films and started in the beginning of talking films. She was kind of known as a flapper in most of her movies. And she said that if you had gotten Mr. Hearst esteem, that you, well, if you slept in the Doge Suite, you had arrived. Now, there would also be politicians. We believe President Calvin Coolidge and Grace Coolidge stayed here in the Doge Suite. Then also British comic novelist P.G. Wodehouse stayed here as well. So it was a place that a lot of people thought was the most coveted suite to stay in here on the hilltop. There were other guests that came, well, Ralph Bellamy, for instance. And, well, that reminds me of a story about Ralph Bellamy, and it has to do with this bed right here. Now, this bed is from the 17th century. Notice that the headboard has initials in it. So typically the groom or the husband's initials would be on the left with his family crest and the wife's on the right. And this was possibly a gift to a married couple. We're not sure if it's from Spain or Italy. But if you notice the bottom part of the bed, it has pegs here. And if we remove the mattress, you would see that there are pegs going all the way around the bed. And what they would do is take rope and tie it to a peg on the bottom of the bed to the corresponding headboard peg. Do that on all the pegs, pull it really tight, and then do it across the bed from peg to peg. And once that was pulled tight, that would become your box springs. The mattress would go on top. And we think that's where the saying sleep tight might have come from. Now, one guest that I had mentioned, Ralph Bellamy, might not have slept tight because his wife kept complaining there was a lion under the window. Well, he said, now, I know you're nervous, but everything's okay. It's late. We've had a few drinks. You might have imagined it. Let's just go to bed. So in the morning, Ralph Bellamy looks out the window, and there was a lion in a cage under the window. So that was one of the things you could do during the daytime. Of course, lots of activities, but if it was raining, well, you might want to choose an indoor activity. And there was always Mr. Hearst's library. Now, you probably would have found that book you've been wanting to read, and you decided you wanted to come back here to the Doge Suite to find a more comfortable place to read it. Well, that just might be in the sitting room, where we have overstuffed, comfortable chairs. So let's find one. And here we have the perfect, comfortable chair to read our book in. But we might look around first and look at the ceiling and get very distracted from reading our book. Well, this ceiling hung in Stanford White's apartment. Stanford White was an interior designer and an architect that Mr. Hearst and many wealthy families really admired his designs. That included antique ceilings and fabrics and tapestries on the walls. This ceiling, we believe that center portion is from a 16th century lithograph painted in the 17th century. It's called the Annunciation to the Shepherd. You could also call it Christmas Morning. And it's surrounded by 8 virtues. And in the corner here, we have patience and charity. It would be nice to be surrounded by all these virtues, especially during trying times. Now, Stanford White was someone that I mentioned Mr. Hearst really admired his designs, but he was murdered prior to anything being built up here, but his inspiration really lives on the hilltop. He was murdered actually by a jealous husband of a former lover at Madison Square Gardens. And Madison Square Gardens was actually designed by his firm. So it's kind of ironic. These fabrics that you see here are not the originals. They started to deteriorate, but these were like the ones that they would hang up. And underneath this, we just see concrete painted walls. Now, as we turn our attention outside, which is a lovely day today, you can see our view. At one time, the Hearst family had 250,000 acres. And we're looking through these columns that look very much like the ones on the Doge Palace in Venice, Italy. Now, the Doge Palace would house the Doge, who was an elected official in Venice. Mr. Hearst wanted the back of the house to look very much like something you would see in Venice, Italy. He wanted to create an Venetian Italian square with water features and pigeons, but that's just one thing that didn't get finished. Now, as a guest here, you might have come at a time where it was very busy and you'd be sharing this suite with another couple, but you might come at a time where it wasn't busy and you'd have the whole suite to yourself. Here we are in the second bedroom. Now, if you were here alone, you could take turns sleeping in different bedrooms every night if you like. Now, as you look around, you'll see that the art is different than the first bedroom, but the ceiling is actually the same ceiling. And that was unusual to have enough antique ceiling to be able to do 2 bedrooms. Generally, the Vanderloo family out of Oakland, California were expert craftsmen up here that did a lot of the extension work for some of the ceilings that you will see downstairs. This ceiling is Rococo in style from Italy from the 18th century. Now, Mr. Hearst was the largest collector of antique ceilings in America. We think this is probably one of the youngest ceilings here on the hilltop. Now, below the ceiling on top of the dresser, we have 2 Qing Dynasty lamps. And both of these are made out of jade. Now, they were converted into electric lamps prior to Mr. Hearst purchasing them. Now, as a guest, your stay was kind of open-ended. You could leave when you wanted to. And you might just come up for a long weekend. Or if you were here during the holiday season, you might stay through Christmas and New Year's. And if you earned Mr. Hearst's esteem, the hope was to get an invitation back. As we're surrounded by all this richness, we also had modern conveniences here at the hilltop. So it was a real mix of modern and antique, which was a great balance for any guest that would be here. Now, if you were ready to leave, you would have, if you wanted, the staff to repack for you, and they would arrange for your trip home. And we hope that you have enjoyed your guest experience today. If you have questions, feel free to ask in the comments section, and we'll do our best to get you the answers back. Remember to abide by the state guidelines, because we all want you to remain healthy so that we can see you up here on the hilltop at Hearst Castle.